Welcome to Why Write. Today we're going to look at the process of reading as it relates to vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. Our objectives are to develop vocabulary, improve fluency, monitor comprehension, make inferences, summarize, and visualize. The reading process. Before you begin reading, you want to preview the text, activate any prior knowledge you may have, set a purpose for reading, and make predictions. And the reading process can be divided into 3 interlocking parts, which are pre-reading, reading, and rereading. I would also add a 4th part, which is after reading. Step 1, pre-read. The reader reviews the text and makes predictions about it. The reader begins to establish a purpose, make predictions. The reader begins to understand the title and assess the audience and learn about the context. So when we look at making predictions, the pre-read, as you review the text, you're pretty much skimming through. And as you skim through, you are going to decide what the purpose of the reading is, and you're going to try to understand the title and assess the type of audience the author is trying to reach. Step 2, reading. The reader verifies or adjusts their predictions. So now during this process, this step, you are actually reading the text and you begin to identify difficult vocabulary. You are applying some sort of reading strategy. And applying a reading strategy means that you are either highlighting or taking notes. You're also reading any questions that the text may have. So this is still the same. This is still step 2. However, this is where you begin to interact a little deeper with the text. You're going to make sure that you are focusing all of your attention while reading. And you're also going to monitor your comprehension. You will begin to ask questions, maybe about the author, maybe about the language, maybe about the tone. You are also going to reread things that you don't understand. Again, you're going to continue to interact with the text by taking notes, using post-it notes, and responding in using response journals. You also can make personal connections as well. So if you're reading a story about someone's life and there are elements of sadness that you relate to, you can make those personal connections, which helps with your understanding of the text as well. You can also create pictures as you're reading, and usually that's what we do. When I say the word tree, you do not necessarily see the word T-R-E-E. Your mind automatically generates a picture of that word. That helps to increase and improve comprehension as well. You also want to check your predictions. So the predictions that you have prior to reading should be checked against the new predictions that you're making while reading. We'll continue with step 2. During the reading process, you want to identify any unfamiliar words. You want to write them down, sound them out, and define. And you also want to use these unfamiliar words in your everyday language. For instance, if you've never heard of the word reputation, you would want to write that word down, sound it out, reputation, and define that word. You would also want to use this word in everyday language. So a current example would be celebrities whose reputations are tainted because of the fact that they've done things that are inexcusable. Step 3, rereading. The reader reviews what they read. They identify any confusion that they still may have. They ask questions, They begin to answer questions and then draw additional conclusions. How can we continue to increase our comprehension of the text? So often students ask me, how can I improve my vocabulary? How can I improve my writing? And the way that you can improve vocabulary and writing is through reading and writing. So I know that sounds a little bit redundant, but it's the truth. So the way to improve your vocabulary is to follow through in step 2B, where you identify any difficult vocabulary and you write that vocabulary word down, and you define it. You have to interact with the text in order to help increase your vocabulary. That's what anything, it's practice makes perfect, right? Or permanent, rather. So in addition to interacting with the text by highlighting, taking notes, and writing down and defining difficult vocabulary, you also want to get a literal understanding of the text. And then you want to interpret. And then you use critical thinking skills. This helps to deepen your understanding a little bit more. For example, if I gave you an excerpt from the reading of Given the Lie by Michael de Montaigne, in which he says, well, but someone will say to me, this design of making a man's self the subject of the writing were indeed excusable in rare and famous men, who by their reputation had given others a curiosity to be fully informed of them. It is most true, I confess, and know very well, that the mechanic will scarce lift his eyes from his work to look at an ordinary man, whereas a man will forsake his business and his shop to stare at an eminent person when he comes into town. The literal understanding of this is that he is saying most people don't look at ordinary men, right? The interpretation of this is how you perceive the terms or the text. For instance, you may perceive that most mechanics don't look at ordinary men. But the literal understanding is that most people don't look at ordinary men. Now, when we get to the critical thinking piece, this is where you begin to analyze, ask questions, and take apart complex ideas. For example, from that text, you may begin to ask questions like, well, why don't people look at ordinary men? And is it okay to write about yourself if you're not famous? So this is where the critical thinking piece comes along. And you may even want to connect these questions to the author or the text. Well, who is Michael de Montaigne? You find out who he is to see if he's famous or if he's just another writer. So this is a way to help increase your comprehension of the text. Know the literal understanding, know the difference between literal understanding, your interpretation, and the critical thinking piece. Now, how do we improve your analysis of the text? Questioning strategies are extremely important. As you just saw, I included questions for the critical thinking piece. Once you have a literal understanding, you've looked at your interpretation, the next way to improve your analysis of the text is to go deeper by analyzing and asking questions. The questioning strategies allow students to comprehend what they read. It allows you to become aware of it allows students to become aware of what they are and what they're not comprehending. It allows you to develop your metacognition. It allows students to internalize the ability to ask questions while reading. This means that this helps to create a practice in you where you will begin to naturally ask questions while you read. Step 4, after reading. The reader reviews, analyzes, and discusses what they read. After you read, reflect on what you read. Summarize any major ideas, interpret and evaluate the ideas in the text, synthesize information from a variety of texts to produce your own opinion, and move beyond the text and apply new information and knowledge to a broader social context. For example, I gave you the example of celebrities whose reputations have been tainted. From the start of the reading process, that is a connection that you can make to this reading. But what if that celebrity's reputation has been tainted? Would I still stop and take another look? This is how you begin to move beyond the text and apply information and knowledge to a broader social context. Some reading essentials. Here's the overview. Always think about what is the topic or theme of the selection. What is the selection's vehicle of communication? What is the selection's genre? What is the selection's mission or purpose? And who is the intended audience? Also think about what are some circumstances surrounding a selection. What rhetorical strategies does the writer use? What features are exceptional? And what is the point of view of the writer or illustrator? And last but not least, what is the result? The importance of being an active reader. So the entire purpose of the reading process is so that you can understand how to be an active reader, how to interact with the text. Active readers, they use relevant prior knowledge before, during, and after reading the text. They create visuals and sensory images from the text during and after reading. They draw inferences from the text to form conclusions, make critical judgments, and create unique interpretations. They ask questions of themselves, the author, and the text that they read. They determine the most important ideas and themes in the text. And last but not least, they synthesize what they read. Reading visual selections. As you look at this picture, you should apply the reading process to this as well. You begin to activate prior knowledge. You probably begin to make some personal connections just by immediately looking at the picture. However, when you begin to analyze the picture a little bit more, you want to look at the details. For instance, what are these butterflies? Are these fairies, right? Remember, your interpretation comes in as well. Is this a forest or is this in someone's backyard? What type of house is this? Is it a tree house, right? Is this a part of, has this been built, right? Who lives in here? What about the roof? What about the ground? So these are questions that you would ask as you're looking at the visual selection. Who drew this picture? So those are the questions that you begin to ask, whether you are reading a text or you're looking at something visual. You want to still go through the reading process. And thank you for joining me for this edition of the reading, for my lecture on the reading process. And for more information, you can review, you can check out the textbook, Why Write,